There will be spoilers ahead. Lots of spoilers, so be careful, won't you?
Once upon a time, there were two little boys, and they were naughty, naughty boys. Rather than go out and play like good little boys, or read books like smart little boys, these boys would rot their brains by watching terrible old monster movies. And they would do this in a marathon fashion, watching rubber monster after rubber monster. When they grew up, instead of real jobs, wives, houses in the suburbs with picket fences and fish ponds, they lived in skanky apartments and took on that most heinous of occupations. They became podcasters.
I don't like this story.
A sadder fate could not be imagined, and those two little boys were given every opportunity. Still, they could not help but raise their grubby fists to the heavens in defiance of all that is normal and good, and shout,
"Welcome to another episode of Max Mike Movies." This week,
I don't like the ending.
Then write your own. This week, as part of our series, I Can't Believe You Haven't Seen That Part, duh, we're poking a stick at the 1984 children's classic Neverending Story. It's a fantasy film with trolls and dragons and, you will not believe this, Max had never seen it. Well, we've rectified that, and if you don't want to be rectified again, you'll say hello to the nice people, Max.
I'm still sore.
Yeah, well, you should be. Oh, and I'm Mike. Together, we're wildly interested in telling you about our poll question. In our last episode, if you'll recall, we asked what kind of westerns you liked best, the classic John Ford type or the newer, grittier type. There were answers. Adam Mark, who loves to give us history, did not disappoint. Quote, "I prefer the Cowboys and Aliens 2011 type. What a wild and shameless ride that one was. Yes!" That's what he wrote. Alas for all of us, Unforgiven 1992 now counts as classic. It's interesting how westerns have almost completely fallen out of the repertoire of standard Hollywood genres. Recent broadcasts like Westworld 2016 and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs 2018, admittedly both TV, have to rely on sci-fi premises or modern, purposefully off-putting dialogue to keep our interest. Django Unchained 2012 and The Hateful Eight 2015 are parodies of the spaghetti western, so while good, they barely count. The Power of the Dog 2021 was by any measure awful and depressing. Really, when was the last unironic, non-cynical Western film of any note or duration in the cinematic imagination released? Brokeback Mountain 2005? There Will Be Blood 2007? I think the gravy train of reliable, profitable, feel-good Westerns ended with Dances with Wolves 1990, when the audience was shown just how much Cowboys and Soldier in the West, well, they sucked. Ironically, Kevin Costner is valiantly making amends to the Hollywood machine with Yellowstone 2018 plus Happy Music sequels. End quote. Whew, guess that man likes his westerns. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Nick Hoffman was a little briefer. Quote, "I kind of like the whole genre. The John Ford Wayne classics, the Cavalry Suite, Shane, the Spaghetti series, Pale Rider, of course, Unforgiven, but I must admit I am a bit partial to Tombstone and Open Range." End quote. Thanks, Nick. Val Coons, have I mentioned the podcast Q Footsteps lately? Well,
no, not at all.
Q Footsteps!
Yes, what's that?
Well, she's the head honcho over there, and if you want to know more about Q Footsteps, look it up. She wrote, quote, "Ooh, that's a more complicated question than it looks. I lean toward the older stuff. I love the character arcs of Stagecoach, the relationships in Rio Bravo, and, dare I say it, a few dollars more. What I don't like in most of the old westerns is the portrayal of any of the indigenous people. Native Americans, for the most part, are vicious savages. Mexicans are stupid and lazy." I know you can't hear the air quotes, but trust me, they're there. "I haven't seen many modern westerns, but I get the impression that they lean into the violence more, which I don't care for. I like my violence under the Hays Code, thanks," implied but not seen. There are always exceptions to the generalizations, of course, Brokeback Mountain, to name one modern film, but I'll stick with the classics, end quote. Well, there you go. Yeah. Thanks, Val. Dave, who has a last name no one can pronounce, said, quote, "Not sure the difference. I enjoy a good Western, no question. The scenery can be beautiful with John Wayne period photography or with more recent. Capitalism shrinks time and space, but I am comfortable with the classic pace and with the more frenetic pace of the turn-of-the-century film that I view as the result of the even faster pace of life driven by our market economy." Okay. Ultimately, the Western as a genre can transport us to a different time and place, and I enjoy the triumph of the individual over a dangerous environment. If there is too much senseless violence and or no attempt to be true to the period, then I'd enjoy as much as a truly character-driven story. In that sense, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, see our last episode on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or even the Kung Fu TV series, stand out for me. And in this genre, I have a soft spot for Stagecoach and High Noon. So, given that list, I guess I prefer classical. Special mention for Snow Falling on Cedars, if that's a Western, end quote.
I don't know.
Well, there are cedars in the Old West and sometimes snow, so I'm going to go with
I think that
sure.
snow would in fact fall on them, yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff as always. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Over to the website, we have Vince, tamer of the Downy Flounder, who gave us, quote, I know.
Flounder.
I couldn't think of any other way to make it sound like the flounder was cold. So it's furred, I guess. Quote, "I really don't like Westerns and haven't really found one I would watch a second time. I get people like them, I just don't. I thought I might like Unforgiven, but nope. Time to add another penguin to my belt made of live penguins. I have to lay off the poutine," end quote. I hear that poutine can be habit forming.
But I hear it goes very well with penguin.
Very well. Thanks, Vince. What about you, Max? I understand you're a Western fan of some sort. Which one do you like?
I like Westerns. I like most of the genre. I do like some of the modern ones, but honestly, I have the soft spot for the classics. I like the old John Ford. I mean, the Cavalry trilogy. And John Ford has a distinction of being one of the very few Western directors of the time who would actually cast Native Americans playing Native Americans.
Of course, he treated them really well in his stories too, right?
In some of them, he was surprisingly sympathetic. If you ever see Fort Apache...
The Bronx?
No, the actual Fort Apache, Texas, I think it was. And they're talking about Cochise. And in fact, he shows up as a character along with Geronimo. And he is portrayed, yes, as violent and dangerous, but also he's defending his people, and it's very clear that the white guys have been treating him and his people like crap, and he just has had enough. So, yes, there is plenty of the red savage stuff in John Ford, but there are also very ahead of his time portrayals. And the cinematography is terrific. Then there are things like The Searchers, which deal with anti-Indian sentiment straight on. Yeah, I'd have to say, if I had to choose, it would be the older ones. They're just, I know they're not accurate. I know they overly romanticize the West. I know they make six guns look like they're magic, like you can shoot people's hats off at 3 miles away. But, I just got a soft spot for them.
Would you say that you think that they are, of the two, classic or current, they're just more Western?
Probably not. Honestly, the more modern ones do things like point out that people were very dirty and smelled bad and didn't bathe and didn't brush their teeth. Whereas, John Wayne's hair is always perfect and everyone's what is it? That line in The Great Race? Your hair is always combed, your car is always clean, your suit is always white. It's like that. But so, no, I think the more modern ones are much more realistic, which is why I kind of like the fantasy, if you don't look at it too close. Never mind the way they portray Native Americans or Mexicans as also the way they portray black people.
If they're even in the movie, which usually they're not.
If they are, they're usually very humble.
Well, as everyone knows, unless we're talking about the Civil War, black people were not invented until 1950.
That's right. And I know you just don't like the genre at all.
I am not a fan of Westerns. I don't like the whole cowboy attitude. I think it honestly has really warped our sense of government in a long way. No matter what, our culture seems to favor the, quote, maverick, standalone character no matter what they're doing. If there is an establishment and a maverick character, then we always just go right for the maverick. And we don't even think about whether or not that person's right or not. We just like, oh yeah, they're bucking the system. Oh, you mean the one that's trying to keep us safe? That one? Okay. Yeah, whatever you say. So no, I am not a fan of the genre. That being said, there are a few movies that I do enjoy, and they do tend to be in the grittier category. One of them is an often forgot of Western, which I think is the first Western I saw that I liked, which is a film called Little Big Man, and it stars Dustin Hoffman. And one of the scenes I love best is he plays a character who his parents were killed in an Indian raid, or I can't remember if it's an Indian raid / cavalry raid, but these Indians take him and his sister in, and they grow up with them. And then later on in life, he goes back to the white man's world and then decides, well, that was a horrible mistake, and tries to go back to, and he has this wonderful character, his grandfather, who is Native American in the film.
Yeah, old lodge skins.
And the end of the film, he's just like, yes, today is a good day to die. And he just lays down, and it seems like it's going to be this really sort of mystical, sad moment. And then it starts raining, and he's sits up and goes, today is not a good day to die. It has a lot of humor. It's probably not very accurate really at all, but it has some, it is one of the few films that portrays the Native Americans, even if not, I would say, realistically or correctly, it portrays them very sympathetically.
It shows them, it makes them look like people.
Yeah, and I think they even just refer to themselves as the human beings, like whatever their name of their tribe is, that's what it's supposed to translate into. And we can get into the little bit of the mystic native thing in this, which we have problems with in other films. But I remember enjoying that film, and I actually really liked Unforgiven. I thought it was a really well done film, and although a Western and not my type of thing, I got it. There was also The Quick and the Dead, which was Sharon Stone, which I remember enjoying, even though that's a bit fantastical.
Oh, it's a comic book.
Yeah.
It's a comic book movie. But again, you have another time Gene Hackman playing an evil cowboy, and he does it really well. This is another movie where there is like subtlety. What does that mean?
Yeah.
The bad guy's name is Herod.
Okay.
Yep. Good Lord.
I forget, did they string her up in that position too? I can't remember.
No, her father, he gets hanged, but no, they don't They don't quite go that far, although you keep wondering, well, I got to go out there and murder me some more Hebrew babies.
Yeah, okay. Jews of the Old West. I also do really like Brokeback Mountain. You and I saw that together. Yeah. And I guess it's a Western. And I think
it's modern era, but they're wearing cowboy hats and riding horses.
And they're punching dogies.
Guess. Yeah.
Although what that dog ever did to them, I'll never know.
The dogies were asking for it, man. They looked at him sideways.
But of course, quote unquote purists of the genre really hate that film being thought of as a Western because, of course, it has gay people in it.
Right. There were never any gay cowboys in real life,
Nope.
Bunch of guys wearing a lot of leather with no women around for months and months on end. Yeah, they just sat around and thought pure thoughts.
I'll be right back. No. So yeah, anyway, regardless, we love all your answers. Thank you very much for them. But you know what they say? Those who give will definitely want to answer more poll questions.
Nobody says that.
Everyone says that. This time out, we'd like to know which movie that you saw as a kid makes you feel the same way now as it did then. Let us know. If you do, we'll be able to send Bumpy to college. Until then...
And then he'll never come back.
No, he'll
come back. A nice college upstate where he can run and play.
Abattoir University? Is that what you're looking for?
No. Elmer's University.
Abattoir State College. Until then, we're still looking into Neverending Story. So here's...
The facts.
Budget, 27 million, though it was really 60 million marks, as this was made in Germany.
Ach, und Himmel!
Take, no idea in marks or kabukis, but it did bring in a cool 100 million bucks.
Wonder there were all those sequels.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Wolfgang Petersen, the director, really doesn't like to use stunt people. He feels the audience knows and feels cheated. To that end, he wanted a child actor that could really do the stuff.
Oh, God.
Noah Hathaway, who plays Atreyu, was indeed injured twice while making this movie. Once he was stepped on after falling off the horse playing his best friend.
Oh.
Some best friend. And he was then caught in the elevator that was taking him down through the waters of the swamp.
Oh!
That's okay. By the time they pulled him up, he was in fact unconscious.
Oh, good.
Yeah, child services? What's that? Oh, and the Gamork, that giant wolf thing, nearly took out his eye and knocked him to the ground.
Oh!
That was a giant robot. So, yeah, next time you get email from Wolfgang asking if you'd like to be in one of his movies, say no.
Yeah, keep your children away from him. He should stick to being a chef.
Huh? No, that's Puck.
No, the Puck's a character from Midsummer Night's
Wolfgang
Dream.
Puck, he's a chef.
Oh!
You're fired again. Oh, Bumpy, do be ready. That all being said, the horse was actually 2 horses, and no, neither of them died in the making of this movie. That's one of those urban legends.
Oh, so it's a movie where the pony lives? I hate those.
It's sort of, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
What was the Empress's new name?
Yeah, I even turned on the subtitles, and it just says yelling.
Yeah, I wore headphones, you can't hear it. It's supposed to be the name of Bastion's dead mother. In the book, the name is Moonchild, which, if Bastion's mom was born in the 60s, is still possible.
Yeah.
This was the most expensive movie made outside Hollywood at the time. In the book, Atreyu is green. The makeup didn't work, so that part was changed for the movie.
Okay. Huh.
The Orin, the amulet Atreyu is given by the Empress, now hangs in Steven Spielberg's office, because of course it does. Now, to be fair, he was called in to help edit the film, so he did actually put his paws on this film. This was not a successful adaptation of the book, at least according to its author, Michael Ende, whose name means end in German. Figure that one out. He wanted his name taken off the opening credits, which they did, and tried to sue to have the name of the movie changed. He lost that suit. The dubbing in this film is somewhat questionable. We'll come back to this. Sadly, for all his acting and stunt doing, it is not Noah Hathaway's voice we hear at all in this movie.
Oh,
which I think is just plain mean.
Oh.
Lucky Europe, their version of the film does not have the hit song opening, nor the electric parts of the musical score.
Doesn't have the haunting love theme from Neverending Story?
No. Though this is called The Neverending Story, it did spawn 2 sequels, imaginatively titled The Neverending Story 2, The Next Chapter, and Neverending Story 3.
Brilliant.
I know. But unless there is any more trivia that you might know that I do not.
Well, I would like to point out that my favorite rendition of the theme song, Neverending Story, is still the one sung by Dustin and his girlfriend in Stranger Things. I think it's the 3rd season.
Yeah, I was going to mention that that's in my notes, but that's fine. Let's get on to the plot. Bastian Bucks, no, I'm not making that last name up, is a sad little boy who's not doing well in school. His mother has recently died, and his dad, who is trying his best to move on, but who is also somewhat lacking in the empathy department, wants his son to stand on his own 2 feet and get on with his life. Trying to seem mature, Bastian agrees and heads off to school. On the way, he's bullied by some rotten little kids who chase him into a bookstore. There, the old man who owns it first tries to shoo Bastian out as he doesn't like kids, especially ones who don't read. But Bastian has, and has read all the classic adventure books one could possibly read at his age.
Ah, but safe stories, one where you come back when you're done. Not like this one.
The old man has a book he won't let Bastian look at because he says he's not ready. Of course, when he turns his back, Bastian takes the book and runs off with it, spending the day in the attic of his school reading it instead of going to class. In it, we meet Fantasia and its inhabitants, a fantasy world that's on the brink of disaster. It seems the Nothing, a formless enemy, is gobbling up just about everything. The only one who can save the world is the childlike Empress, but she's taken very ill. So, a hero is called for, Atreyu, one of the plains people who hunts the purple buffalo. You know. He alone can find what's needed to make the Empress well and save the world from the Nothing. Taking his trusty horse Artax, Atreyu sets off across mountains, deserts, and the Swamp of Sadness to find the cure. Along the way, he loses his horse, is thrown in the mud, sneezed at by a giant turtle, and faces certain death under the laser-like gaze of the Sphinx of the Southern Oracle. But all is not exactly as it seems, as Bastion's world and Atreyu's are closer than it appears. Can Atreyu bring the cure in time? Will Bastion step up, or simply become one of millions without hopes and dreams? And what do dogs and dragons have in common besides the letter D?
The film.
So, Max, as we have pointed out,
Yes.
you never saw this.
I never saw it.
Were you aware of it when it came out in 84?
Yeah, I think I saw the previews probably. I had heard about it, but I don't know. I was just not at a stage. It just sounded very much like a children's movie, and at that point I didn't really feel the need.
I don't know that you're wrong about that. I think
Yeah.
it is a children's movie. Although, weren't you still going to see Disney cartoons at that time, if I'm not mistaken?
That's art.
I see. So, in the many decades since then,
Yeah.
In the many, many eons since this film came out in
Thousands
1984.
of years ago. Yes.
you have had no compunction to sit down and watch it.
No, it's one of those that I always think about, I should watch that episode of Stranger Things where they sing the song made me think, I've never seen that movie. I should see it. I just never got around to it.
Just out of curiosity, in Stranger Things, are the kids, do they seem to be in favor of the movie?
Oh, they seem to really like it.
Oh, cool.
He's called her for some vital information, literally to save the world. She doesn't quite believe him. She's mad at him. She says, you have to sing the song for me. It's like, we don't have time. Sing my song. And he's
cool.
over the shortwave radio. He sings it and she joins in. It's actually a really adorable rendition.
I got to go back to that show at some point. I stopped watching somewhere midway through season 2, and it wasn't because I didn't like it. I just literally stopped watching it and forgot.
I think it stays fun.
Yeah.
It's not the first season was easily the best, but anyway.
I want to give a little bit of background. Wolfgang Petersen. So he directed a few films you probably haven't heard of, like Poseidon, which, yeah, you know what that is. That is the remake of the Poseidon Adventure.
Ah, yes.
Troy, The Perfect Storm, Air Force One, Outbreak, In the Line of Fire, Enemy Mine, Das Boot, and, well, many other films.
Wow, so he's kind of uneven, but he's got some biggies in there.
Yeah, he actually got some flack, apparently, for just doing big budget, profitable films. Damn you. How dare you make films that make money? Get out of it. Oh, no, wait. Stay. And he made this, which, all things considered, did basically 4 times its budget. So that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it does not surprise me this movie was German because, the giant turtle, Morla, it's like, yeah, there is no point to existence. But
That's more French.
No, it's Nietzschean. It's like, we stare into the void and the void stares back at us.
I admit that's not what you want in your NPCs. Nothing matters. Why bother? It's this giant Eeyore.
Yeah, pretty much. Or Glum from Gulliver's Travels. We're never going to make it.
Nothing is Glum from Gulliver's Travels. You. But at least the film opens with possibly the most 80s soundtrack since Lady Hawk.
Lord. It seriously is. Although it's not, to me, the Lady Hawk soundtrack, it's a movie I love, but it's much more jarring in Lady Hawk, I think. Partly because it's set in, olden times, and this is supposed to be contemporary for 84?
84.
Yeah. So it's not quite as jarring, but it is still, it's like, welcome to the 80s. And even the kids, the bullies, like, hello, we'll be your 1980s bullies for this movie.
Yeah, that whole opening sequence is like, okay, thankfully, they just get it out of the way.
They do. It's done quick and gone.
I don't know if you noticed, but for some inexplicable reason, the lead bully, the curly-haired bully, is wearing a Zippy the Pinhead t-shirt.
I missed that. Oh, wow.
Like, what the heck? Why
Are we having fun yet?
Yeah. Okay,
yeah, like
sure.
all bullies wore, sure. And, of course, Bastion's dad, doesn't have a name. He's just Bastion's father.
Hey, it worked for American Pie.
That's Major Dad himself, Gerald McRaney.
Who's that?
He was a show called Major Dad. It was a sitcom from like the 80s and 90s. Was on for a long time. He was also one half of Simon and Simon.
Oh, was he Simon?
No, he was Simon.
Oh, I thought he was the bear.
No, he's done it. He was a staple of TV for decades.
Speaking of BJ and the bear, why is there a monkey named Bear?
I have no idea.
Please tell us.
Yeah, why? I don't get it. Is it just because he's hairy? I don't know.
I mean, they did know in the show. I never watched it, but they did know it wasn't a bear.
I'm
right?
pretty sure they knew it wasn't. I'm about 60% sure they didn't know it was a bear.
Although, to be fair, if the show had been called BJ and the Chimp, I don't think anyone
It wouldn't have
watched
suffered. I don't think it could have gotten any worse.
I wouldn't. You wouldn't have watched a show with the word chimp in the title, would you? Not
doubt
since
it.
Lancelot Link.
Hey, I love that show.
We are way off topic
Yeah.
here. Sorry
Also,
about
in
that.
the credits, we get introducing Tammy Stronach,
Yeah,
who
and
is the childlike empress.
wave goodbye, because that's the last thing she's going to do in
Yes.
movies for about 20 years.
Yeah, although
But that
I
was by
gotta-
her choice.
If you see pictures of her later, she grew up nice.
Well, I just to see what had happened to him, I looked up Noah Hathaway, who is playing Atreyu. He became a tattoo artist and is actually a very nice looking man. He's about 50, 51, I forget.
Okay, well, good for him. What about Barrett Oliver?
You would not recognize him. He has got a very, very long black beard and frizzy black, like, scientist hair, and he's bald on top. And apparently what he did is he did a few films. I remember there was a film called Daryl. He played android in that. I never saw it.
That's right, the robot kid. He was in Cocoon, too, I think.
Yeah, he did like a few films after this and then kind of said, yeah, the heck with this, and walked off. And actually became a very well-known and respected, how do I put this? Archaeological photographer, and I don't mean he takes pictures of archaeological sites. He goes back into old types of photography and brings them back. And apparently he's very well thought of for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've forgotten, of course, probably his greatest role as Victor Frankenstein in Frankenweenie.
Well, and here's a funny thing. When I looked at Frankenweenie, it said that they had kept that short in the vaults for a number of years, and you and I saw that in 1985.
Yeah.
Right before Babies, Secret of the Lost Legend, a
But it
brilliant dinosaur film with
we saw it in
William
England,
Catt.
so
Yeah.
maybe there were different release laws. But
I don't know. Yeah, no, we saw Frankenweenie. So
Yeah.
I barely remember that film. I remember thinking it was actually reasonably funny and that Baby was terrible, which
Yes.
I will stand by
dull.
not having seen it in nearly 40 years. So yeah, we get the opening with the wonderful music. And then Spielberg clouds.
Yep, lots of Spielberg clouds. You can see his thumbprints all over the film.
Yeah. That being said, we also get this typical bullying. They call him the weirdo. I'm guessing it's because he reads.
Freak.
Well,
Yeah, this is the 80s. You don't enjoy sports ball and you're not large? You are a weirdo and we despise you.
yes, and you don't have a funny accent here in Vancouver, as it turns out.
I want to know where that school is because I never saw any school that has cool an attic as that school had.
Well, I don't know about you, but I personally think that every elementary school should have a taxidermy wing.
Absolutely. And a fully articulated human skeleton just sitting there and
Because kids want
big
that stuff.
stuffed wolf's head.
Sure. And sorry, here's the thing that I didn't think of at the time, which makes no sense. But when they actually have the wolf head fall down and scare him at one point during the storm, I couldn't help but they were trying to do this Wizard of Oz thing where it's like, well, is he reading a story? Is it fantasy? Blah, blah, blah. But I don't think they are. I just think that the comparisons are weird. Did you even make that connection at all?
Oh, yeah. I think because it looks exactly like the Gnort or whatever it was, the wolf thingy that's after him.
Yeah.
And as we find out, the line between fantasy and reality is pretty darn thin in this.
Well, and of course, this is going to be tough because there is a kind of twisty ending, and it's going to be really hard to talk about the film without referencing that and giving something away. So, as we always have in the beginning of the show, the part in the theme which says there's going to be spoilers, let's just sort of underline that.
Yeah,
if you've not seen
spoilers.
this film and you're kind of saving it, this might be a point where you want to walk off and come back to the
Go
episode
watch
later.
the movie and come back,
Because the ending is a very important part of the film, and I don't see how we're not going to be able to talk about it. So, yeah. I got to say, though, this kid is very well read, and he mentions the books he's read to the old man in the bookstore.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like about this film is the absolute wonder that this kid obviously gets from reading. Do you remember doing that, Max? You're a kid who's lost in books?
Oh, God, yeah.
Quelle surprise.
Yep.
But there was nothing like it, right? And if you were in a particularly good book, you would stay up and keep reading it because you needed to see how it ended.
Yeah,
right?
you had to. It didn't matter if you were sleepy. It didn't matter if you hadn't eaten. You had to keep reading.
And, part of me sits there and goes, oh, yeah, kids today don't do that. Except I worked at a bookstore, a major bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and I was there when the Harry Potter books came out.
Oh, yeah. There were kids who didn't sleep for like 3 days because they couldn't stop reading the books.
Well, we had late night release parties because we weren't allowed to release it until midnight. And so what would happen is we'd keep the store open and the kids, we'd have activities for them. And they came in costume by the hordes of them. And they would wait until midnight when we could actually open the boxes and sell the books. And the funny thing is as many kids and parents were there, we were done in less than an hour because they were like, we can buy it now? Cool, we're going home. And everybody knew that none of those kids were going to school the next day.
Yeah, yep, everybody was reading. Yeah, no, it still happens. I believe that.
And I love the fact there's many, many times where we see Bastian literally face deep in the book and he's talking about the things in the book. It's like, no, this can't happen. And he's so just wrapped with this story. It is the center of everything he cares about at that moment. And
you see this, you see the same thing in The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
When the kid who starts off sort of like, oh, yeah, whatever, you can read it. And then he's like, no, wait, you read that wrong. Wesley doesn't die.
He can't die. He's the hero.
Yeah.
You telling me he didn't die because I'm telling you he died. All right. I'll read it back again.
In the book Princess Bride, the kid who's being read to, because that is a framing device of the story,
right,
really gets upset.
Yeah. It was just so nice because if anything in this film, that really brought me back to childhood of for me, it was a lot of Hardy Boy books. I used to I would sit there in the summer and I would just sit there and read them. Sometimes well into my teens, into my late teens, even 16, 17, 18, I would read Hardy Boy books. But I really love the depiction of the kid loving to read books and how much he got into them. Real quick, this film is mostly on the shoulders of two actors.
Yeah, the two kids.
Yeah. And I got to say, I think they both do an excellent job.
They do. I think and George Lucas, pay attention. There, you can find good child actors.
Yeah.
And, Barrett Oliver does a nice job. And
Noah Hathaway.
Noah Hathaway? No, that's right. He was Boxy on Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, he was.
Yes, they do a nice job. Even the little Empress, who's on screen for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think she does a really good job.
And, of course, this is meant to be a kid's film. And I think one of the nice differences is that all the adults quickly get out of the way.
Yeah.
Of both sides of the story, both the Bastian side of the story and the Atreyu side of the story. Some of the characters are adult fantasy creatures, but really we're focused on the kids. And dear gods, poor Noah Hathaway. Oh my gods. When you sit there, because sometimes when you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, okay, that's not William Shatner. The hair is totally different and he's half a foot taller. And yeah, he's holding his cape over his face, but we know it's not Bela Lugosi or whatever. And in this film, there's really only one point where I'm not sure it's him, and it's like there's no reason for it. At this point, he's fallen off the horse. He's been thrown in the mud 3 times.
Yeah.
And at one point, he's got a shoulder wound, and it's like, I don't know that that's fake blood.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's latex. I think he actually has been maimed by this movie.
And he just sucks it up and does it. And there are older actors, adult actors, who don't go through the crap that he does.
Yeah.
So, and I want to say the earnestness on Barrett Oliver's face when he's reading and he's really into the story, he does. I don't know. I don't see a lot of kids who can pull that depth of acting off at that age. And I think that they both deserve some sort of something.
Absolutely. They deserve a lot of recognition for that. They're both really impressive.
Now, on the other side of things, we have some special effects.
Yep.
That...
Hey, from 1984.
They aren't really all that special, let's face it. They are, but here's the thing, they're reaching really far. They are literally making giant robotic things that need to have expressions. And they're obviously somewhat mechanical. That being said, I think a lot of those expressions are surprisingly good.
It's remarkable with the Rockbiter, particularly. Who is basically a costume slash special effect, and they make him very expressive. Which, when you consider that he can barely move,
Right. I mean, he's got a tongue.
He has a tongue.
And he enunciates.
Yep. And he is voiced by the great Alan Oppenheimer, who also voices pretty much everybody. He voices Falkor, the dragon. He voices the Mort, the wolf thing.
Didn't he also invent the atomic bomb?
No, that's a different Oppenheimer. But, of course, he was also Man-at-Arms in He-Man Masters of the Universe.
That guy?
That guy. He has done so much voice work.
Well, as we know, he runs on neutrinos. Yeah.
No, not the movie, the cartoon.
Oh.
He was the real Man-at-Arms.
The real. Yeah, well, if we're real lucky, they're going to make another one of those, so whatever.
They probably will.
Yeah. This film is almost entirely dubbed. I think that there's times when Barrett Oliver isn't, and even if he is, it's his own voice. The rest of the time, you can tell, and it's terrible. I honestly I could tell. I didn't know that it
didn't
wasn't.
bother me. I barely noticed it, really.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of times I will watch these movies with headphones, and if you have the headphones on, you can tell like the voice has literally none of the ambiance of the background.
Yeah.
So, and this was almost all shot on a studio in Germany. So, but the sets are incredibly expansive. Like all the different things he goes through. I mean, you could see that they spent a lot of money on this, I think. But sadly, this movie does suffer from early onset whimsy.
There's a fair amount of whimsy in this, although there's some stuff that, I mean, we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the death of Artax.
Okay, so did you know about that ahead of time?
Yes. How could I not? It's been memed all over the internet for 20 years.
There's actually a great photo of somebody who was cosplaying Atreyu at a con somewhere, and he had the head of the horse in the swamp behind him, and whenever asked to stop for pictures, he would turn and, like, plead to it. No, Artax, no!
Oh.
It was hilarious. What about the death of Artax?
Okay, I know this will make me sound heartless, and I'm sure it's different if you're a kid watching it. But I was like, okay, these two characters, Atreyu and Artax, have been on screen for less than 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. I'm not emotionally invested.
Well, that's because you don't like Bumpy.
Well, yes, I'm also all for watching horses die, but...
Terrible person.
No, I'm not. I'm kidding. Just one horse in particular.
You're a terrible person. There's a deeper.
But I didn't get it. Again, I think it's very different if you're a kid. It's not like I didn't find other things. I find the Rockbiter's speech, if they look like good, strong hands, don't they? Where he's lamenting that's friggin' heartbreaking.
Yeah, there's a point in the film later on where we see the Rockbiter again, and he had been traveling with these two other characters, and apparently they got sucked up by the Nothing, and he couldn't hold them back.
He couldn't save them, and it's just broken him.
Yeah.
And that to me was much more heartbreaking than watching Artax die, just mainly because the Rockbiter had been around longer. We had more invested in him.
Well, I want to say that too that it's actually an expression of personal failure. Where, to be fair, Artax mostly said,
I mean, the idea of that's the other problem. The idea being that you get sucked into the swamp if you give in to the sadness. So you're telling me the horse is depressed?
I think it would probably be fairer to say that the horse gave in to fright. Like, I can't swim, not in mud.
Get me out of here, Wilbur.
You're kind of small. You're real strong, though, right? Right? I still felt it was sad. And I think part of the reason I felt it was sad is because that Bastian felt it was sad. And Bastian was putting himself in the place of Atreyu like you're supposed to.
The reason it does come across as sad is Atreyu is just sobbing and you got to give the kid credit. He threw himself into that.
Yeah, he did. I can totally see your point. I don't know that I felt the same way, but I can totally see your point, and it definitely has merit. It is very soon. We haven't seen them really. All they've done is ride. If like at some point Artax had saved his life from something, maybe that would have. Or if we like, there's this one really cute scene where Atreyu is asleep and Artax wakes him up and he's nuzzling him, and it's like it's obviously have a very close relationship, but there isn't perhaps enough evidence for us to feel that. So
that's the only scene like that we get.
Yeah. I do love that when Bastian is first sent into the bookstore, runs into the bookstore, and the old man is like, well, you don't read. And the kid's like, well, I've read this, and this. Basically, every kid's adventure book you could think of. He has this book he's just happens to be reading. And he goes, no, this is not for you. I don't know about you, but my first thought was, is that 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah, I have to say, this scene did not age well. Here's the little boy, and here's the old man getting right up next to him, right into his face, and telling him about this forbidden book. Again, it's very hard for a modern sensibility to look at that as it was totally innocent in the movie.
Yes.
It's hard to see it that way now.
Yeah. And of course, it's just me and projecting, but I did still think it was funny. Yeah. One of the other things about the book reading that I like is the idea that the heart of every hero is its reader, and that those characters exist because we take them into us and make them something. If you read a book and you don't get into it, the hero doesn't come alive. And that is a pretty major part of this film, although the cool part is Bastian doesn't realize this.
Yeah, not for quite a while.
And in that way, and in other ways, this is one of the most meta films I have ever seen.
This is incredibly metatextual. It really is. It's like, at the end, it's like, fourth wall, hand me that hammer.
Well, let's get there and let's make another warning.
Okay.
We're about to discuss the ending of the film, and so if you haven't seen it, go away and come back. And we're back.
Yep.
So Bastian's reading this book, and he's totally drawn into it. He's totally ignored everything. No one's come looking for him, although why they'd look in the taxidermy attic, I don't know. But it gets to the point where it becomes very obvious that he is part of the story as well, and that the book is directly referencing the fact that he's reading it.
Yeah, and it refers to him, and it says, yes, there's a kid reading us right now, and he doesn't realize how close he is, and he's like, they're not talking about me, are they?
And at first it scares him, and he runs away from the book.
Which is not unreasonable. I think that's a perfectly legitimate response.
Well, how would you have felt as a young lad if you were reading the book, and then the princess in her downy robe and sapphire crown turns and says, Max Levine, will you save me?
That book would be in the fireplace so fast. I've got the Necronomicon. Oh, my God.
Especially if it then said, no, Max, please don't throw me into the fireplace like the Necronomicon. So,
Yeah, that would freak me to hell out. I think Bastian's reaction is completely warranted.
And, of course, this leads into why is this called the Neverending Story? We can see it's one book and it has an end, so, like, what's with that? But eventually, things happen, then nothing, which is never really even a thing. It's just sort of...
It's a void. It's the absence. It says when it's that which fills the place where when people let their hopes go and their dreams die.
Yeah, and there's a great quote near the end where it's, people who have no hopes are easy to control.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Some of this stuff is uncomfortably timely.
I know.
When what is it? That was the main thing, is the people who have no hopes are easy to control. Yikes!
So, yeah, we get this metatextual part where Bastian is understood to be part of the story, even though he just picked this book up seemingly at random, but then it takes another step past that.
Out, even further out, saying the audience, we, the people watching the movie, are part of the story.
Right. And this is where we get into the whole Neverending Story part. And the end of this film...
Yeah.
I tear up every time. I know we're getting ahead of the does it hold up thing, but she needs a new name. And the whole idea of the story is Atreyu has gone off looking for the cure for the Empress, and he can't find it anywhere. Everywhere he goes, the Sphinx, where he has to basically not look down upon himself. He has to trust that he is worthy enough to go past them, or they will kill him.
Yeah.
And he manages to do it barely. And he gets to the
cheats. Part of it he does by running.
You know what? Hey, if it gets him through, it's better than the guy in the armor. And that wasn't. There are parts of this film that are a little bit intense for children.
Never mind the horsey dying, but this knight gets fried alive in a full suit of plate mail.
And luckily, as Atreyu passes it, his helmet flips up, so you can see his all charred goodness. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then he gets to the Southern Oracle, who's just like, sorry, can't help you. I got to go now. I'm breaking up. And Atreyu just heads back to the ivory tower. I wonder why that was named. To the Empress. And he's like, I'm sorry I failed. And she's like, you didn't fail. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, we needed a human child, and I couldn't get past the edges of Fantasia because Fantasia is made up of the hopes and dreams of people. There is no boundary. I failed.
It's the world of the imagination.
And she says, no, you succeeded.
He's here.
You brought him with you. Your adventures brought him with you. I'm sorry, this actually gets me emotional. I don't know why, but it does. And I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You read a story, and you put if it's a good story, you lose yourself and you're part of it. And that's the whole point of this movie. And I really liked that part. And I honestly thought, as janky as some of the rest of the parts of the film are, as the not perfect sense of some of the green screen and the puppetry are, the ending is this really, I honestly, when I first saw this, did not see it coming moment that I think really pays off. And poor Bastian is just like, this can't be real. I cannot give myself over to this story until he finally does.
Yeah, and he does. Although, if we are talking about the ending, the very ending of the movie is kind of odd.
It is.
Because
and as it turns out, it's only about half of the book. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, because this is, I thought I saw where this was going. It's like, okay, now he's going to go home, he's going to leave, he's going to like face the bullies on his own, he's going to have a renewed sense of purpose, he's going to understand that that there's nothing wrong with reading, but there's going to be this question of, did this really happen? It's going to be ambiguous. No! He ends up riding the friggin' dragon through the streets of Vancouver, apparently, chasing and people can see it. This is real. He has brought the luck dragon, which I thought was an interesting idea, Falkor, into the real world. Then we hear yes, we do. Yes, he did, because we hear a narrator say that he went around and had a lot of adventures before returning to the real world.
Well, and that's the thing. Had a lot of adventures before returning to the real world. I honestly think that was one of them.
Okay, if that's the idea that it's still just in his head.
Yes, and
that's
the book,
possible.
I didn't read the book. Apparently in the book, the second half of the book is him having adventures in the land of Fantasia. And interestingly, this is sort of a Wizard of Oz kind of thing, movie-wise, not book-wise. Eventually, he has had his adventures, and he comes back to the real world and forgets everything he'd done in Fantasia because he leaves his dreams and hopes there. That's apparently the deal with the book. And one of the reasons that the author didn't like the way they were doing it in the movie.
I can see that. That's kind of it's a somewhat more interesting ending.
But luckily there would be 2 sequels which starred totally different people and had different directors.
And apparently are terrible.
Well, the second one had Jonathan Brandis in it. And
who?
Jonathan Brandis, you may know him from Sea Lab 2020. What was that?
Oh dear, the cartoon?
No. What was the live action thing that with?
Sequest.
Sequest 2020. Yeah, with what's his name from Jaws in it?
Roy Scheider.
Roy Scheider. Right. Yeah. Jonathan Brandis showed up, and I don't know. I just didn't care for him as a child actor. Apparently, he had a very, very difficult career and ended his own life fairly early, which is sad.
Dear.
But then the third movie had nobody else. But the problem was, of course, the kids in this film got older, and they were too old to do the film. So it was like, we can't do a sequel because you're like dating age now, and we can't do that because you're supposed to be 12.
Come on, Falkor, we gotta find the Empress.
Yes. So when Atreyu's drop, then yeah, I'm gonna have adventures with my horse Artax. Say we're going out. Gosh, what should we do now? Yeah, that would have worked.
That's too. You know, the other thing about this movie is there are some surprising people in it. There are a lot of that guy is in it.
It has to be because I didn't recognize anybody.
Yeah, like. In the beginning, there's a character, yes, he's called Teeny Weeny. He's the little guy riding the snail because he is, in fact, played by Deep Roy. Who, if you have seen a little person in any movie for the last 40 years, that's him.
I thought it was the guy who was Mini-Me.
Vern Troyer, no, he was much later.
Or Billy Barty.
Deep Roy has been around forever.
Oh, yeah,
you may more recently know him from the Johnny Depp Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where he played all of the Oompa Loompas.
I was just about to ask if that was him.
Yeah, that is him.
Okay.
And there's a guy, Chiron, which we don't know his name at any point because no one says it, but he's sort of the guy who speaks for the Empress when she's sick. That's Moses Gunn, and Moses Gunn has been in everything.
Okay. Was he in one of the Star Trek movies?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He's one of those actors where you go, oh, it's the classic, that guy from that thing, like Vincent Schiavelli. Yeah.
Oh, I love Vincent Schiavelli.
Vincent Schiavelli's wonderful.
He's there are certain character actors that I love in everything, and he is one of them. If you don't know who Vincent Schiavelli is, look him up. You will go, oh, that's Vincent.
Yep, that guy.
I can't imagine how long his IMDb page is. It's got to be gigantic.
It's got to be forever. I have to say, one of the things that strikes me about this movie is, this kind of might have worked in our In Search of D&D series. Because apart from the metatextual stuff, which sometimes does come into D&D.
True.
There's a whole lot of, okay, here's the hero, he's given his quest, runs into all these NPCs, doesn't loot anything, but...
doesn't actually kill anything either.
Well, yes, he does. He kills the Gmort.
Okay, that's true. At the very end, he's not armed and he doesn't hack his way through things.
He picks up a sharp rock and kills him.
Right, no, but it's along the way he was not allowed to take any weapons, so he's not hacking his way through things. Okay. And the only thing he really does is stand there with the sharpened rock as the Gmort attacks him. So you can't really blame him for that. But my note was, parents, this is exactly the kind of movie that leads to D&D.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. I think the only reason it wouldn't have worked is he's alone. And D&D is usually a group effort.
Yeah, there was no real party. It was all one guy and NPCs.
Yeah. And otherwise, I totally agree. Maybe this is the D&D game where you only play the one person or something. Yeah. Video game, I mean, yeah.
Something like that.
It has a very European / mid-'80s fantasy feel. I had a very similar feeling from both Krull and Ladyhawke. That kind of fantasy background. It's this is not the one we tend to do in America. It's definitely a more European-based.
Well, they got more castles and stuff.
Well, they also, although they do have the Luck Dragon, who is very obviously an Asian-inspired dragon as opposed to European.
Except he's fuzzy. There are no fuzzy dragons.
He's a puppy. He's meant to be warm and cuddly.
Yeah.
I mean, despite the fact that as a 30-foot-long robot, he could fall on you and kill you.
Yes.
But that's beside the point.
Yeah, and I liked the comic relief NPCs, Engi Wook and Urgle. The exposition dump and the healer.
I was a little upset that they kind of plagiarized H.R. Puffin stuff with the stupid bat character.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Stupid bat, yeah, because I'm sure that's what they did.
Yeah, I'm sure that was exactly what they thought of.
Yeah. I'm going to say also this is a very slight thing. It's a cultural reference that you don't see as much anymore, and it's not even mentioned in the film. It's just obvious that Bastian is a latchkey kid. Yeah. Remember those? Because I was one of those. Mm-hmm. That's when it's kid, I'm heading off to work. You know how to get in and out of the house, right? Great. We'll see you when you get back.
Dad is very much like, well, I'm very disappointed in you. Now I have to go off to go to business.
Well, actually, that brings up a question I wasn't even planning on asking. So the kid's mom's died.
Yes.
Do you think that actually has any bearing on the story?
Well, sure. It explains it would increase his tendency for introversion, where he looks for books, he looks for fantasy because the real world is painful.
Maybe he just likes them.
Yeah, but I think the problem seems to be that he's become obsessed with them and that he's not paying attention to anything else.
You know what that means?
Yeah.
That kid's going to grow up to be a writer. Good for him.
Probably. But I think that is an effect. He's looking for comfort because he sure as hell isn't getting any from dear old Dad, and school doesn't seem to be helping. He doesn't seem to have any friends.
Well, Bastian's life is so briefly shown. Yes, Dad has the empathy of a can of mustard. Really, that's about it. And it's just sort of that... It's a very soft version of toxic male masculinity. Oh, we don't have feelings, son. You must learn about that.
Father, I had a feeling today.
Well, don't.
Yeah. And he also has to deal with the fact that his parents named him Bastian.
I don't know. I think it's kind of a neat name.
All I could figure is maybe it was short for Sebastian. It's a made up name, but
he's very much an archetype. The character of Bastian is the book kid, the nerdy kid. His father says, "I'm really upset you didn't try it for swim team," and all I could think of was, "Up yours, Dad." Sports is not the answer to everything. But him being a latchkey kid, there's a lot of stuff going on. But he's very much an archetype. We don't get a lot about him. His mother's death obviously troubles him for 30 seconds, and then doesn't really become part of the story until he decides to choose that as the name for the Empress.
Well, he does say, I wish I could give her my mom's name. She had a beautiful name.
That's it. But I'm not sure how much it matters, because really the important part is everything else. Speaking of everything else, do you have any more notes, or should we get to this? Because I'm actually really curious.
I was a little surprised by the fact that the magic MacGuffin that Atreyu wears around his neck does virtually nothing until the last sequence.
And even then,
it's not really, it's like, well, it's glowing, and it's telling us to keep flying in exactly the same direction that we've been going.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't mention was that besides those two sequels, there was a TV show.
Oh, I think I heard about that.
Yeah, I watched a clip from it on IMDb. It is, what's that word? Regrettable. Yes, that's the word.
Unfortunate, was it?
Yeah. And it's 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes I saw of this TV show, and it's like, you don't have any idea what this is, do you? And the amulet glows and does something. I forget what it is. But
there are a couple of, I like one of the lines that Engi Wook has, confronted with their true selves, most men run away screaming.
Yeah, the Mirror of Erised.
Yeah, the dark mirror there.
That was a really creepy, cool scene.
It is. It's a very cool scene. I'm also sitting there going, okay, from a gaming point of view, this kid's a moron. Why did you run away and leave the Luck Dragon? He's right there. He could have flown you over the laser sphinxes.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But that's not how you get there. You only get there. Max, have you ever played D&D?
That's that Dunces and Dummies game, right?
Hey, you little dunces, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, Max, you give me my own dunce. Thanks.
You want to use the head dunce? I was, in fact, the head dunce, yes.
Yeah, the mirror scene where we first figure out what's going on, and he sees Bastian as his reflection, and Bastian realizes he sees Atreyu, and another one of the meta parts of the film that I really liked. The only thing that wasn't D&D-like is what should have, of course, happened is the reflection of Atreyu comes out and he has to fight himself. That's what you do.
Yep, that's what happens. That is expected.
But I think we should get to that part.
As I think so.
I'm curious.
The finish.
So, Max, you had never seen this.
No, and I still haven't.
Yes, you have.
Nope, I have not.
I can prove it. I can just listen to the rest of the show.
Damn.
So I finally bought you, whatever, into watching this film.
Yes.
So what did you think?
I wish I'd seen it as a kid. I think as a kid I would have gone nuts for it. It's a little harder to see as an adult because you can see where most of it, except the very end, is going. Mm-hmm. And you do look at things and going, okay, yeah, that's very 1980s. But I think it's pretty good. I was surprised. And they deal with some surprisingly complex ideas about self-reflection and the power of the imagination and the idea, in effect, of the collective unconscious. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good.
Cool.
I
was going to say, did you think you were going to like it ahead of time, or did you have, what was your opinion? This is going to be cheesy?
I had no idea. I thought, this is going to be kind of a kid's movie, and it's going to just be very simplistic, because the sequences I've seen of it over the decades have looked kind of childlike, but actually watching it's like, okay, this is a bit more complicated, a little deeper than I would have thought.
I was worried that you might think, oh, Mike likes it. It's probably Hudson Hawk all over again.
Hudson Hawk was an anomaly.
Was it?
And besides, I also think it's a fun movie. I think it's a terrible movie, but it's a lot of fun to watch. I've seen it several times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it works pretty well.
Now, do you think that kids might get something out of this today, or are they just too jaded and the special effects will just be like, this is so fake, it's so phony?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I think they would, because there's still some narrative stuff in here that hasn't been done to death. That level of metafiction, while that's not the way a lot of cartoons do it or a lot of kids programming do it. It's more of a wink to the audience or, breaking the fourth wall as a joke, not integrating it into the plot. That's unusual. I think that's distinctive. I think kids would like it. I mean,
Neat.
I think they would. There are some scenes that will really upset kids. I mean, like I say, the Artax scene didn't bother me that much, but I could see, especially kids who like horsies, which is most kids, that would be a really traumatic scene.
Are you saying if you brought a small child to this, you'd take them out and they'd just stare at you and go, I see dead people?
Pretty much. Or, why did you do that for me?
And it's funny. I think when this film came out, the average age of its viewer is older. It's younger, I should say.
Younger?
No, I was right. Is older than would be considered ready for this film now. I think in some ways, visual communication has readied children for ideas like this sooner than might have been. This might have been a 10, 11-year-old film then, and now I could easily see 7, 8, or 9.
I don't know. The way that people tend to either self-censor or actually by film codes, what was it? There were rules in cartoons as late as the 90s where you couldn't use the word death or dead.
Right.
And they wouldn't show blood. And they would not. The worst that would happen is, oh no, he's gone into a coma. They did that in the G.I. Joe movie, I remember.
Well, I'm sure that's because the voice actor was fired.
Probably. But, I'm not sure. I think that this might still shock some kids. They don't see a lot of actual death, especially you watch the horse die. You watch him sink into the water.
It cuts away.
Yeah, but you see
his
it.
head's sticking up in his eye. The whites of his eyes are like, you're going to pull me out, right? You're going to pull me out, cut away. So.
Yeah, that's more than you see in a lot of kids' stuff these days.
Yeah, so a vote of thumbs up from Max.
I think so. How about, what did you think? Now, you've seen it. When did you first see it?
I did not see it in the theater. This was during the golden age of the video store. And I'm sure it got brought home at some point, and I've seen it only on VHS up till now. I do own a DVD copy, so at some point I bought it and watched it again. This is not a film I will watch too often because I like to forget the impact of the ending. This film makes me cry. I think parts of it are beautiful. I love the ending. I love the way they bring in Bastian to the story and make him a part of it. And I love the way it makes me remember how I would fall into a book and just not notice things like what time it was, or, oh, I didn't eat today, or shower, what's that? The power of the word. And of course, this is very timely because what's going on right now? There's a big writer's strike. Because why? Because people still treat writers like crap, which is ridiculous. And let's face it, the writing of this film, even if it's not a perfect representation of the book it comes from, the writing in this film is really good.
It is. It's surprisingly good.
I would say the two things that this film really relies on are a good script, a really good script, a really interesting script with a lot of depth, especially for kids, and some pretty seriously good acting by kid actors, which you don't often see. So, yeah, I am a very, very big fan of this film. It touches me. I really like the film. I honestly can't guess if kids would like it today or not. It may be a little slow for them because they want everything to blow up and more action. But the fact that it does not in any way insult its audience, then its audience was meant to be kids. They, like you said, it gives them some pretty heady things to think about.
Yeah.
And I am a fan. So, again, the special effects... Yeah, we've seen it done better. Would have been better with CG? Sure. Does that really matter in the end? No.
Not really.
So I'm a big fan of this. But I'm also a big fan of people answering our poll question.
Well, tell us what it is again.
Well, our poll question is, what movie that you saw as a kid still makes you feel the same way you did then, now? Or is it now then? And to do so, to let us know, you can send us direct email to us at maxmikemovies.com. Go to our website, maxmikemovies.com, where you can see all our episodes, leave comments, give us ideas. Hey, we got a little correction last week. It was texted But we still really appreciate hearing from you. So if there's anything that we got wrong, let us know. If there's something we got right, let us know. Ideas for shows or series, let us know. You can also do that over to the Facebook page, which is, big surprise, Max Mike Movies. And hey, if you like podcasts and you have a podcast app that is your favorite, we're probably already there. Of course, if you're listening to us, this is a pointless piece of... We should stop adding that part. People know,
Yeah, they know.
I hope. But this show, this series, has just got started.
Yep.
And next week, it's going to be Max's turn to pick a film I haven't seen, and I'm going to sit here and cringe and cross my fingers. And Max, what are we going to watch next week?
Well, we're going to watch something by one of your absolute favorite directors, Mr. George Lucas.
Oh.
Yes, we are. I mean, it's called A Big Bag of Rock Salt.
Wait,
No.
I've seen every George Lucas film.
You haven't seen. I don't believe you have seen this one, because this one stars Richard Dreyfuss and Opie. We're going to
Ron
watch
Howard.
American Graffiti.
Wait, really? That's George Lucas?
That is George Lucas, and there are a couple of ways to notice this. In addition to the presence of Harrison Ford.
Yeah. The spaceships and monsters and stuff?
No, but there's a license plate that I believe is THX 138.
1138.
No, it can't be that many digits. In this movie, it's 138.
Oh, well, that's wrong then, isn't it?
Well, you can argue that with George. He can't hear you from atop his huge pile of money, but you can argue it with him.
Curse you, George Lucas!
But yes, this is very early George Lucas, and there's nary a droid or a Jawa to be seen. There's just cars, teenagers, and of course, that science fictioniest of eras, the 1950s. Join us for that, won't you? This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.